Everyone, and welcome to another podcast of the Escape the Echo Chamber with myself and my fabulous co-host Matthias. And our guest for this pod is a bit of a living legend, Kevin Wheeler, founder of the Future Talent Institute, and somebody that's provoking quite a bit of discussion in relation to his thoughts around AI and the impact on recruitment and talent at the moment. Kevin, welcome to the pod.
Thanks very much for having me. Glad to be here.
Amazing. So for those individuals, and probably very few individuals that may not be aware of you, please just give us a little intro. Who is Kevin Wheeler?
Sure. I run the Future Talent Institute, which is basically a nonprofit think tank. We try to look at what are the future trends in work and recruiting, learning and development. We've been doing this for close to 20 years now. I try my best to educate and inform people about what I think is about to happen. And that's kind of what I do through articles and talks that I make all over the place.
Amazing. Matthias, over to you. Set the pod up. What are we discussing? This is going to be a spicy one.
Yeah. Well, I first of all, very happy. You know, sometimes you believe you know it all, and then you meet people like Kevin, and then you be like, oh, I actually don't. So that's always great to have great people here on the podcast. So Kevin wrote a really interesting article. I think even I shared it on my LinkedIn earlier. It's a couple of weeks already ago. I think the article is from April 23rd this year. And it has this title that is already provocative enough to make it to the podcast, to be honest, right? And it says, The End of Recruiting, and why AI won't just change your job, it will eliminate it. And I think this is one of the articles that, you know, they have seen a lot of articles around how AI will impact the talent acquisition or how we should think about this going forward. And so this is why I'm so excited, because, you know, if you read the article for the first time, already the opening is wonderful, right? So Kevin wrote, I'm tired of hearing AI won't take your job, but someone using AI will, right? And this is a false reassurance for recruiters. So this is already where we get into the conversation. And Kevin, before we dive into this, what made you write this article? It seems like, you know, you were very much not happy with what people said about AI and recruitment. So maybe you get us started. What were your motivation to write such an article?
Sure. You know, I think that there's been so much hype about if you become an AI expert, if you learn how to write prompts, if you learn how to use AI more effectively, then you'll somehow become a super recruiter. And, you know, maybe for a few hours or a few days, that might be true. But the bottom line is that's not going to be sustaining over the long haul. And the profession is just changing dramatically. Everything is changing in the world, basically, because of AI. But clearly, recruiting is just one of those professions that's undergoing massive transformation. And when you look at the tools that are currently available, that are out there, just anybody can buy these tools. They do sourcing, they do screening, they do assessment, they engage candidates. They already are doing these things, and not without error, not without flaws. But we're at the Model T stage, basically, of AI. Just imagine, and we're moving a lot faster than we moved from the Model T to the modern car, okay? So we're moving really fast. And these tools are just going to become better and better. They'll hallucinate less, they will lie less, they will be more accurate, less biased over time. And they will, within the next very few years, replace all traditional recruiters. And my article was really aimed at the people who value their skills in interviewing and sourcing and so forth. Those are dead. Those skills are gone, and that profession is gone. It's like being a telephone operator or an elevator operator. All right, we don't need them anymore. All right, and they're gone, and so isn't the traditional recruiter.
And that's kind of a mic drop right there, Kevin.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's kind of almost like, yeah. I mean, I must admit, when I kind of read the article, I was like, okay, well, I feel quite comfortable with some of the things that you're talking about here. I'm pretty confident as well that other people would have read that article and it would have scared the shit out of them because they were thinking, well, okay, hang on a second. I've got some AI hacks and I'm kind of keeping ahead of the curve, etc. But AI hacks will only get you so far. AI literacy is the long-term game. And I think if you lean into AI literacy, you understand where the kind of people and talent kind of market, if you will, industry sector is starting to track. So yeah, it was definitely some bold claims in there, which I think, you're kind of almost making predictions based on what you're seeing now. And this is coming from a place of authority, right? You're not just kind of like, oh, I've read a few articles myself and let me push something out. You're kind of working with these tools. You're assessing these tools. You're understanding, current state versus kind of future state, etc. So it's a well-informed article. So for anybody, first and foremost, if they're this far into the particular podcast, go and read the article, come back and watch the rest of this podcast, because I think you need that context. Otherwise, you could watch this podcast and just go, Kevin's a really great guy, but he's obviously just kind of predicting a few things. You need to read the article. You need to be informed, because everything after this point in really provides some context or further, deeper context. But Matthias, back to you. We're going to go through point by point, won't we?
Yeah, I think it makes some sense, because I think for the people who have not read the article yet, is really what Kevin did. He posted he put some subject headlines to the article that he then explained in more depth. And one of it is a couple of myths that somehow are put in there that he kind of contradicts or proven to be right or wrong. And here, definitely, I would like to start with the first one, which is a very obvious one, is like productivity will increase, right? And AI will save recruiting by increasing productivity. So Kevin, up to you, like, why do you took this one?
Because I mean, this is what I hear the most often. This is why if you read a lot of articles or talk to people in recruiting, they say, oh, AI will augment what I do. It'll make me more efficient. It'll make me more productive. Instead of hiring 3 people, I can hire 5 people or whatever. And the reality is that's not true. It doesn't happen. We know from 2 different approaches. One is historical evidence that no matter whenever we have new technologies, productivity actually tends to go down as we start to learn to use these tools and become familiar with them. So it doesn't really increase productivity. It actually complicates things, makes it much more complex. Instead of just being able to, log into the internet and type in, find me such and such a candidate, now you've got to go through some sort of AI-enabled tools to make that happen. So it requires you to learn more, to become more accomplished with these tools, which adds time and complexity to what you do and slows you down. So the bottom line is it doesn't increase productivity, it decreases productivity pretty significantly. This is a rule that's been happening for almost forever. Whenever new technology comes in, it adds complication and confusion in the first part and slows down productivity.
And I think it's an interesting point you make, Kevin, in so much as when new products are kind of presented to the user, typically they try and use it in the same way they've used tools previously, right? Because that's how they've kind of learned to use those tools. So they're like, okay, well, I can just use it in the same way and it will do more for me. So the output will be better, but I can use it in the same way. And then they hit that kind of obviously reality where it's almost like, oh, actually, it doesn't work like the tools I used to. And then there's that challenge around adoption. If it doesn't do what you want it to do immediately, some people are just like, oh, I'll just leave it. They don't have the patience, time, and inclination to want to learn because they're under that kind of pressure to keep to the pace of quote unquote delivery within their particular role. So it's to your point, there's been numerous examples of where new product, new technology has actually impacted or slowed the rate of productivity when it's first introduced into the market. So why people are surprised by that and they're buying into that narrative of AI will just make everything a lot quicker, will be so much more productive. Seems slightly naive.
But it's a great sales pitch for the vendor.
There
Okay,
you go.
so that's the bottom line. I mean, how
Yeah.
do you sell something like this? You can't sell a tool that will replace you, so because you're not going to buy that.
Yeah,
So
well, some vendors have tried that and it didn't go down particularly well. I've seen it on LinkedIn, and they were just like, "Yeah, basically we're going to replace all your recruiters," and then suddenly there's just like a whole group of people just diving onto that thread. So it's a sales tactic, but it's not going to win you many friends.
no, it's not going to win you many friends. And I think it kind of brings me to the second point I made in the article, which is
Mm.
that AI completely changes the game. All right. So the way we've been doing things, our traditional way of even thinking about things, um, uh, is radically going to change because of AI, because of what AI can do. So it doesn't speed up, like, for example, resume screening. It eliminates the need for the resume altogether because AI can go out and find everything it can about you on the internet without any need for the CV.
Yeah.
It can analyze your social media posts, anything you put online, and so forth. It completely changes the game, and I think this is what recruiters don't get. They're looking at these tools doing what they currently do,
Mm.
and what they currently do is gone or will be gone. Okay, so these tools are going to do things in a completely different way. So things like conventional sourcing and screening and interviewing, these things are gone. Okay, it's going to redesign the workflow. It's going to eliminate these current processes. It's going to predict attrition. It's going to be able to tell a company you're going to lose 5 people in the next month. It's going to have already sourced some passive candidates on the internet, maybe even engaged them already, already screened them and gone through their background, so it can offer up candidates almost immediately, instantaneously to a hiring manager, maybe even personalized to the hiring manager, saying, here's 3 people perfect for you and what you're going to need and or what you currently do need, even when the hiring manager may not even realize that. So, I mean, this is what is such a mind-boggling change going on. It's not that we're just going to, replace an elevator operator with a button you push. It's changing the need for the elevator altogether. Okay,
Mm.
and so this job is, in my opinion, gone in our traditional way of defining it, which is why I said this is eliminating your job.
Kevin, would you say because the TA world is like it is, or the profession is like it is until now, is also the reason why our jobs are so easily replaceable with an AI that is out there? So let's say, is it you wrote in the article task-based thinking, yeah, just learn AI and you will be fine. But like, is it because we are so transactional and so much like, step by step, very administrative, heavy kind of a profession that this will be removed? And instead, if you would have been much more mature in your practices, it would be much harder to be removed.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at what the average recruiter does and the average company hiring the average hire, it's extremely transactional, right?
Mm.
There's probably very little actual engagement with a candidate. There may be there may be an interview, there may be a chat on the phone, but it's very minimal and it's very superficial, okay, in its depth. And all of those things for 90, 85, or 90% of the hires that we typically make could already today be done in a more automated way. In fact, Amazon and other companies have already done this with for example, warehouse workers, where
Mm.
the warehouse workers don't have any human contact. They log online, they apply for a job, they're screened online by answering a few questions, and then they say, report to this warehouse tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock or whatever. Okay. And here's the salary you're going to be offered. Right? No human involved in that, and the candidates are perfectly happy with that. In fact, they're the kind of job they're looking for. They dread having to go through that human interaction. Okay. Uh, Now, this probably doesn't apply to the very high level, executive level kinds of positions in companies. And traditionally, those haven't been transactional jobs. Those have been jobs that involve deep engagement with the candidate, deep knowledge about the candidate, long conversations and even negotiations with the candidate. Those are going to remain, but I don't call that recruiting.
Yeah.
That's a different field. All right. So those things will probably be around for a long time into the future, and there's a role for the new emerging skill set for recruiters that we can talk about a little bit later. But the traditional recruiter, the recruiter that we're talking about, is the bulk of recruiters that exist today.
Yeah.
Have we sort of said then basically human judgment, the long held competitive advantage that the recruiter has always kind of defaulted to, like we know, the right person, the right hire, etc. Are we saying that human judgment in certain types of recruitment now isn't the competitive advantage that perhaps it used to be or has historically been referenced as?
I don't think it's ever been that significant. Like I said, mostly it's bias and prejudice. It's not really human judgment. You sit down and you have an interview with somebody, and you like the way they look, or you like the sports they play, or whatever it is, and therefore they do better in the interview than somebody else. Okay, we call that culture fit, judgment, whatever. It's fundamentally bias and prejudice for the most part. Very rarely is it based on any real factual data. Now, I'm not saying it's not. Uh, uh, there's not some validity to that, but we don't do that with most candidates. Most candidates are not put through that sort of rigorous cultural testing, so to speak. Okay, um, the average candidate probably has, other than scanning their CV and then having, maybe a phone interview or maybe a personal interview with a recruiter. Um, that's about it for their engagement. How can you really know a person? How can you really assess their fit or their personality in that very shallow, structured, scary, stressful situation where the person is not very comfortable in this position. It's a power game. The recruiter's in a position of power. You're in a position of weakness. There's no reciprocity. And again, like I said a few minutes ago, that changes at the higher levels when that becomes a very different game where there's more equality. You're both in equal power. They want you and you want them. So it's a negotiation. But for the average hire, it's you're in a very bad position as a candidate, compared to the recruiter, who's in the position of power and authority and can make a decision based on very shallow, vague, and unscientific data.
Glenn?
Oh, no, I was going to say, I think there's, I think even if you've done the kind of training and work to kind of highlight your own unconscious bias, to kind of think about neutrality, think about neutral, inclusive language. I guess that the challenge there is, as a human, can you stay consistent? Can you stay consistent all the time? So, are you the same at 9 o'clock in the morning as you are at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Are you at the same at 11 o'clock at night? It's kind of almost like you can have done the work, you can do the training, you can be mindful of it, but can you apply it consistently? And I think what Kevin's talking to there is there will be a degree of kind of consistency, as long as to the point of getting rid of these kind of biases that are kind of baked into the models and the tools. And we'll come to Workday, I'm sure, at some point. But I think there's strength in the argument from Kevin's point of view that kind of consistency in terms of fairness, clarity, communication, reducing bias is one of the value adds of kind of AI tools and software. Whereas the human, for all our wonderful perks and qualities, we do have our fallacies in terms of kind of being able to consistently apply our energy and our kind of knowledge and, kind of practical application of things.
Yeah. I mean, I have no issue with, at the end of a fair process, a hiring manager says, I can work better with this person than that person. Okay. That's where
Yeah.
the human comes into the situation. But to get to that point where we immediately screen people out because of their name, for example,
Yeah.
or we screen people out because of their sex or their racial background, and the thing that the value of AI is that it can, as we get better at it, and it's not perfect yet, and I'm the first one to admit we got a long ways to go, but it can interpret tone, it can detect lies, it can do things that humans are very bad at. Okay, we are easily conned. All right, and if you're a very good interviewee, you're very skilled at the con game. How can I present myself in the most positive possible way? How can I read the recruiter and understand, oh, this is what she or he is looking for, and this is how I'm going to respond because I'm very good at reading the recruiter, right? So, there's all kinds of games being played in those early stages that are fundamentally prejudice and a con game in effect, in a way, uh, whereas the computer would not be deceived by those things. And it would see through those and focus more on pure data, therefore giving the final set of candidates would be far more qualified and better. And then if a hiring manager says, I like this one better than that one, I can live with that. That's okay. That's a personal thing. That may be just what a hiring manager can work with better. Uh, those things are probably never going to go away because they're human.
Yeah.
But you've got to give the hiring manager the best possible slate of candidates. And that's what AI can do.
Yeah. Let's talk about the network will always matter conversation. I look, Kevin, when I read the article and I needed to pause a little bit and be like, why network? I think honestly, I in my career had a positive experience with networks, right? It's important to build a community, to have people that you know, and then you can leverage these networks. And after a certain career, after a certain period of time, at least I believed that my network is somehow a solid way of getting to great people that I know that I can bounce my head around, get some learnings, etc., etc. So with this one, maybe explain yourself first, Kevin. Like, why are you saying that networks will always matter is pretty much a lie?
Well, a couple of different approaches to this. First of all, most people's networks are quite small and quite limited. All right.
Okay.
You only can handle so many people in a network. I used to work in the semiconductor industry in Silicon Valley, and it was just a musical chair game of everybody knew everybody, and you swap one job to another job. I go to other countries, smaller countries, where everybody knows everybody in a profession, and it's just a matter of people replacing other people, and you're not really bringing anything new into the equation. It's all the people are in this thing, and so a lot of these networks are very they're closed in effect. Okay, they are very small, closed groups of people. Again, filled with prejudice, filled with personal likes and dislikes. Okay, and whether it's on LinkedIn or whatever, LinkedIn was good in a way that it expanded that network to some degree, gave you a little bit bigger than your local network. I mean, when I first started recruiting, we had no internet, we had nothing, right? We had a telephone, but our network was about 10 miles, right? And if you lived more than 10 miles out of that network, I probably didn't know you, and I probably would never find you and never know you. Okay. So networks are limited just by physical constraints. Okay, this is what AI removes. AI is global. It can source people anywhere based on your skills and abilities, not on who I know or who I like or who I had lunch with or who my wife referred me to or whatever. Okay, these are this is going to be a far more a broader and far more objective approach to finding people. So I think an AI generated network is is far better, far more robust, going to have far more ability to look at what people's real skills are. I mean, let's face it. If you're willing, and we will be eventually employing people remotely and globally. We already are, but that's going to increase more and more over time. As if the best person is in India or Africa or the North Pole, shouldn't matter if that's the best person with the best qualified skill sets that I'm looking for. Okay. So what we're really talking about with networking is personal bias and prejudice again. And you're in my network because you're a good buddy and I like having a beer with you and I'm going to try to find you a job or hire you or get somebody else to hire you because I like you. Okay? So a network is an AI network is more robust. It's broader. I think it's fairer than any personal network that you can have.
Yeah, Kevin, it's an interesting point you make, right? Because when people talk about their network, they talk about it in a very kind of generic, large scale kind of way, right? When in reality, it's actually segmented. You have your personal network, you have a professional network, you have your creative network, you have your sports network, etc. And I'm going to challenge Matthias here in so much as from my, so I'm going to go first, but I'm going to challenge you, right? From my personal network, right? I think I've probably hired maybe half a dozen people from that. Like, from my genuine network over the time I've been in kind of recruitment, right? Because the majority of the people I've hired for the companies I've worked with have not been in my network. There might have been one or two hires, like maybe a marketing manager or like kind of like a chief people officer or chief product officer. But there's no more. It might be half a dozen, maybe 10 at the most, and that's over 20 years. So to Kevin's point, that kind of almost like how useful is your kind of network?
Yeah, exactly.
Really? How many people have you directly hired from your own personal network into the companies you work for?
Yeah, and that brings up a good definition sorry to interrupt you, Matthews, but what's a network? How do we define a network? What does that mean? So yeah, that's.
No, I 100% agree. I think, look, you both made a really good point. Like when I try to position myself as a recruiter now, and I would argue this network is here only for me to hire people and to fill my roles, then I would argue my network is almost useless. But my network has a different purpose. Let's put it like this, right? I have a couple of people that follow me for the stuff I do. I have other couple of people that I, kind of can exchange thoughts or I follow because they're super interesting, or, I can talk some topics with them. I can help. I can maybe even use them for my challenges and to get some help to them or from them to overcome these challenges. But for recruiting purposes, I totally agree. It's definitely something that is maybe even sometimes in my way. So I had an example where I wanted to hire someone in my team, and then this was a time where not so many recruiter positions were open, and then everybody somehow knew me, and they were all like bombarding me, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. So what I needed to do then is I needed to remove myself from the hiring process, almost say, other people, please talk to them, even if I know them, but you need to talk to them because I'm completely biased. And then I will just enter, as Kevin said it so nicely, in the later stage with 2 to 3 final candidates to then maybe say, okay, based on what I've seen so far, this is a good decision base or a good base for a decision. And so, yeah, because you are biased, right? If you know all the people by name and then you see their resume, you'd be like, oh, last time I met this person 10 years ago, 7 years ago, last time in a pub. And then you make a decision because of that in that process. That's silly, right? So I get your point there. If network has only the purpose to fill roles, then I totally agree. It's not useful, also from my personal perspective.
And just imagine what AI can do in terms of building networks. They can go out and find all kinds of qualified people, no matter where they are. It can assess their skills and abilities. It can create talent pipelines that are very robust, that you can tap into, that a hiring manager could tap into, far bigger, far more objective than anything a human could ever do.
Yeah, totally. Let's talk about the next one, which is also somehow related from network to relationships. Now, recruiting is about relationship delusion. Kevin, maybe you're gonna get us started with that because, yeah, I don't say anything else. You get us started with this.
As I said earlier, at the higher levels, at the executive level, at the then relationships are part of that equation.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority of recruiting, 85, 90% of recruiting, it's a very minor piece. You don't build trust. You don't understand motivations. A candidate applies for a job, okay? And theoretically, if you had a relationship, you would understand their motivation. You'd understand, why they're applying for this job. You'd take time to build a trust relationship with that person. You might negotiate the offer. None of that ever happens. None of it ever happens. You look at a CV, you say, yep, looks pretty good. You call them up, you have an interview, you like them or you don't like them, and you invite them for another interview, and that person either likes them or doesn't like them, and they have another interview and they get hired or they don't get hired. There was no relationship. You may kid yourself that it's a relationship because you spent 15 minutes talking to them. But if you meet somebody on the street and say hello for 10 minutes, do you have a relationship with that person? I don't think that's how we define relationships, okay? So having an hour chat with somebody is not building a relationship. It's just communicating. And once again, a lot of prejudice and bias comes into that whole thing. If you really want to communicate at that level, chatbots are fantastic at that. Chatbots can have a great conversation with the candidate, answer their questions. They can do the whole process from initial engagement right through to even onboarding without any human relationship at all. So, I think that behavioral analytics, AI, and so forth can assess the candidate's career goals. It can assess their risk of quitting the job in a short period of time. It can even analyze what their salary expectations are way faster and better than a human can. Okay, because of the data it can collect about candidates and people. It can optimize the comp packages. It can do all kinds of stuff that a human recruiter could only do in the very smallest number of very high level positions, and certainly not for the bulk of hires. If you're hiring, a few people every month, there's no way you're going to be able to build what I would call any significant relationship with any candidate.
I think that's a really important point, Kevin, for anybody listening. It's kind of almost like if we're talking about kind of volume hiring, the opportunity to build relationships within kind of volume hiring, I would agree with you, is very difficult simply because of the volumes that need to be hired. Now, if you're a small stage, kind of seed, kind of even angel invested kind of startup, you've got a lot more time to invest in perhaps that hiring process. And it can be a lot more hands-on. So there are kind of degrees here. But to your point, it's kind of how do you balance that human interaction connection with removing bias, actually getting meaningful data, and actually, then creating a kind of fair process where the actual outcome of the hire or the hire is based on kind of data-led insights. You know what I mean? So it's kind of worth considering the different types of kind of recruitment we're talking about here as well. I think just to kind of come back to your point around almost what AI can do for the kind of talent team or to replace the talent team. What's your kind of take on the flip side of that in terms of how candidates or how candidates are warming up to or thinking about that kind of fully AI enabled experience?
Yeah, I mean, we have this myth that we always want a human in the loop, right? That everybody wants a human in the loop. And we thought that for shopping, remember? When Amazon first came out, the biggest argument was women will never buy clothes from Amazon because women have to go shopping and touch the clothes and try them on and et cetera, et cetera. And we know that's not true. Women buy more clothes than men do on Amazon, all right? So the bottom line is that, we have a lot of these myths that, we've always got to have a human in the process. That if we don't have a human, people aren't going to be receptive to an offer. They've got to have a human to talk to, right? And in some cases that may be true, but in the vast majority of cases, the data already shows us that employees don't really care. What employees want is a fair, fast answer to whether I'm going to get a job or not. That's what they want. Okay.
100%.
I'm looking for a job. I want to get an answer. Am I going to get this job or not? Am I going to get it eliminated or not quickly as possible so that I can move on to other things? Okay. I don't want to be kept. I mean, what's the number one complaint candidates have? It's the human piece. They don't get back to me. They don't answer my phone calls. I never hear from it. It's a black hole. Okay. That's because of the human is in the loop. Okay. If we got the human out of the loop, those things go away. Suddenly you get an answer right away. You get some sort of a decision made relatively quickly, and so forth. So, I think that at the very end of the process, like I said earlier, that when the hiring manager is sitting down with you, yeah, you probably want to talk to the hiring manager, the person you're going to work to. But I'm talking about getting to that point, okay? And getting to that point is where a human in the loop is actually a detriment, I think, and not a help to getting to that point.
Yeah, I think it's, to your point, it's candidates want the quality of answers, right? So if you think about some of those early chatbots that were just bloody terrible, of course, based on that, you're going to want to speak to a human, right? Because the chatbots just pulled you in a loop of pointless information that it couldn't. But now, individuals, when they're looking for a new job, they want that transparency. They want information. They want good quality information to allow them to make a decision as to whether they want to apply and invest their time. And to your point, they want feedback at each stage. And building in and baking in a kind of tool that can give them that actually enhances the experience for them. And I think at the real high level, where the quality of the experience is really there, the information is really great quality and it's really useful for them, I think they'll start to forget about the fact that they may or may not want to speak to a human.
It's just like buying a product. I mean, there's a certain point with certain kinds of products where the complexity is so high or the decision is so big that you do want to have some chat with a person. But you're going to do a lot of research before that online. You're going to go to the internet. You're going to look up YouTube videos. You're going to do all kinds of stuff. And then if you really need a human at the very end of the process, you can contact them, right? But that means that the company only needs one person to make that contact because the volume is so small that you don't need a whole ton of recruiters doing that, right? So if at the end of the process I need something answered as a probably a higher level candidate, then it wouldn't be a problem to get a human to reply to that. But the problem that recruiters have right now, when I hear from recruiters, is I'm swamped with too many people. I can't deal with the volume, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, the relationship piece just becomes meaningless, as does the human in the loop.
I have to say, well, my mind goes a little bit into this direction. Does it even have an effect how the market looks like? So what we keep on seeing now that, it became more of an employer market than an employee or candidate driven market. Does that even matter? Because, what I have in mind with this relationship topic or with the human being in the loop, what I have experienced when I still was a recruiter myself, is also some time ago. It is really much like if I'm a candidate and I talk to, let's say, 7 or 8 companies that week or the next 2 weeks, right? I would make a call, even if this is a very biased call as a candidate, to say, who are the 2 or 3 people that I remember? Who were the people that actually, they sold this well? I could get all my questions answered. I think I had somehow of a connection. And these are the people that I would say, look, here, I would love to continue with this person, right? Isn't it in the beginning of the process when the interview stage with the recruiter, does that not somehow matter? And don't we also say to a certain extent that you can see the quality of a recruiter based on who they are? Like if you have somebody that is actually quite good in expectation management, very much structured and knows what they want, you have a higher chance of the quality per hire because that person has very high standards and he or she is actually applying these standards towards the hiring. Like this is where I'm a little bit like, I agree with relationships, to be honest, right? And it's probably also, but that's another podcast, maybe our relationship definition is so screwed over the last generations that that's why we believe we can still build relationships with people by just having conversations. But honestly speaking, real seriously, I think that there is a human touch that will play a role also in the decision making of candidates. Or do you disagree? I mean,
Yeah, I more or less disagree.
yeah, okay, good,
Okay.
fair enough.
How many people remember who their recruiter was? You know,
Hmm.
month
Hmm.
after they get hired. If I asked a candidate who recruited you, I don't know, some guy, some woman, somebody, I don't remember who they were. They were very nice. I mean, you don't remember that any more than you remember who the sales clerk was that you talked to, right? Even though Jane was a
Yeah,
really
true.
wonderful person, I don't remember her after I walk out of the store. Okay. The
Yeah.
relationship that matters is between the job seeker and the hiring manager. That's the
Hmm.
relationship that matters. Okay. The
True.
recruiter is a middleman. A recruiter is an
Hmm.
expediter. Okay. And if I can remove that expediter and replace that expediter with an AI tool that's more responsive, more accurate, less biased, faster, and from a company's perspective, more cost efficient, I'm going to replace him with AI.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Matthias, you're going to go?
Yeah, what makes me, or what gives me some hope here is that Kevin says, well, the relationship to the hiring manager is still important. So there's still a relationship that is important, right? It's not just the recruiter one, right? I think this is something that makes to a certain extent sense to me, right? Because also when we talk about culture, I mean, you can, for example, create videos and you can watch and you can research a lot. I totally get it, but to a certain a point, I think you need to have this also understanding of who do I work for, like, what is this person like? Can this person help me to grow? Do I share their vision of how to work and execute and become stronger and what I want to do? Like, I think these things matter. So if we don't have any relationship in recruiting, and that's, by the way, not what Kevin said, right? Then I would have had even a harder time. But from a recruiting standpoint, I get it.
I guess my vision is that a hiring manager in the near future, it'll be very much like booking travel or anything else. They'll go to their computer and they will say, "This is what I need. I need somebody who can do this." And the computer will deliver to them relatively quickly, perhaps instantaneously, two or three qualified people that they can then reach out to and talk to and have a personal relationship with, chat with face to face, whatever. Okay, but those people will be highly qualified and they will have been chosen through as unbiased a process as we can put together. Okay. Now the recruiter is gone. There's no more need for the recruiter. The recruiter, like I said, right now, I think the recruiter fundamentally gets in the way, slows down the process, introduces a layer of bias that is another layer of bias, and doesn't really expedite the process. We did it in the past. We had recruiters in the past because the volume of people applying was too great for a hiring manager to deal with, and we needed somebody to weed them out and get it down to a level that a hiring manager could talk to one or two people. Okay. Uh, but even today, we don't have recruiters for small companies, right? Very, very few small, a mom and pop, restaurant. They don't have any recruiters.
Of
And
course,
they don't need them because they do it themselves, right? So the reason you're going to go back and say, why do we have recruiters at all? And the reason we have recruiters at all was to deal with volume and to help with, filling mass jobs like manufacturing jobs where you have to hire 100, 200 people, right? Hiring manager can't deal with that. So we created this group of people called recruiters who are intermediaries. And they filter, they screen, and they do all this stuff with all the flaws that we've just discussed. If AI can do all that, then we eliminate the need for recruiters. I still think we need people in this process, but not doing anything that we've just talked about.
Yeah, I agree. I think the term hiring manager self-service keeps coming up a lot when I sort of see the narratives around hiring managers being able to kind of almost self-serve and start to find the talent themselves, which then leads to the kind of transparency, the ethics, we need to understand how these tools are arriving or delivering those three qualified candidates. We need to get inside the black box and actually understand what data is being used to get to that decision point. So, you mentioned earlier, Kevin, around kind of being able to AI tools, kind of being able to go out and access kind of social media posts and loads of different data sources. Now, ethically, if I'm there and I'm like, well, actually, I don't want them to look at my Facebook, or I don't want them to look at Instagram because that's me with, loads of pictures of me and my cat. And it's not really relevant to my professional career. So I think it's, to your point, I think people are focusing on probably the wrong thing, which is what kind of AI might start to replace. And they're like, okay, how do we bridge that? How do we keep the human in the loop? Actually, the focus should be on, okay, how do we really get the transparency, the ethical, moral, kind of baked into these tools? Because actually, if we can do that now, we can scale with confidence. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you have a kind of workday scenario where they discover after the fact that loads of people are being screened out based on ageism. Now, that could have been, I don't know the full details of it, but I would imagine something like, right, if you put in a job description, oh, we're a young and vibrant team, the AI tool's got to screen that, pick up young and vibrant, and then extrapolate that out in terms of the screening process and be like, well, if you're over 40, you're not young, and the likelihood is you're not vibrant. So it's really about fixing those things and actually really focusing on the build of the tools rather than thinking, oh my God, when am I going to be replaced? It's going to happen.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So get to the point that's actually going to be really interesting and really valuable.
There's plenty of roles. That's one role, which I call it the sort of the AI auditor or the AI overseer, right? The person who understands AI in depth and can really analyze algorithms and make sure the tools are fair and unbiased. Okay, that's a role. That's a role that will emerge. Already is emerging. Okay, there's a role where we have to have someone who can use the AI tools to help understand the total talent marketplace. Who's out there? What skills are available? What skills aren't available? That can help the organization look at it in a very big holistic approach, right? As opposed to just filling a slot. But should we build, buy, borrow? What kind of talent should we have, and how do we get that talent, right?
Yeah.
We need somebody out there who can look at employee development and say, how do we build internal capabilities within our organization? How do we fill the needs that we currently have? So there's many, many roles that people that are currently doing recruiting could move into, but they're totally different roles in terms of skills from what we have, what they do today. And I've written a couple articles recently about, in fact, last week I think I had one on what some of these new skills might look like for recruiters. And there's a number of things, and ethics, as you pointed out, is one. How do we make sure we're making ethical and legal decisions? How do we follow any laws that exist out there, and so forth? So there's many different roles, but they're not roles about sourcing, screening, interviewing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those roles are not.
Absolutely. I got to put it into two brackets: AI literacy, AI hacks. AI hacks is everything around trying to keep the job as it is, but kind of augmenting AI, and that's a short-term gain. AI literacy is everything you've just talked about there around the kind of ethics, the auditing, governance, actually really understanding how to implement the tools safely, kind of create psychological safety around, kind of the changing landscape of technology within particular businesses. So if you're still sort of focused on that AI kind of hack pathway, that is the shortest pathway.
Right. Absolutely. And there may be a role for coaching hiring managers, helping them understand, for creating candidate experiences where they can, there's a lot of potential things that can happen. And if we look at the travel agent analogy, which is not a perfect one, but it's got some similarities. For the average travel, you go online, you book your flight, and you're done, right? For the average candidate, I go online, I look for a job, I apply, I get one. Okay? But if I really want to take a 3-week tour through European countries, I need somebody to curate that experience for me, right? Somebody who can help me pick the hotels, the best travel, that give me tips on what restaurants I should go to. And that's where a travel agent can play a role. So a recruiter can have a similar kind of a role, certainly for executive level and high level places, I'm an executive. I'm looking for a new role. Where should I go? What company should I apply for? Okay. So these are the things that to be honest with you, really good headhunters are doing, have done for 50 years. Okay. Uh, so, I mean, to me, the role that will endure and grow is going to be that role of that executive headhunter, that good ones that have been around for a while that really find that next CEO for your company. Okay. And these are where everything I just talked about plays a part: relationships, networking, etc.
Okay, I think can you both hear me well? Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Because my mic disappeared, and I was like, "Am I muted? Am I not muted? What's going on?" Anyhow, so Kevin, you already kind of touched upon what people should do, what kind of future roles will exist. Yeah, with the trend that is now happening or is going to happen. Let's maybe double down on this a little bit. Like, if you're a recruiter right now, yeah, and I believe the roles that you have discussed already, or you wrote down already, we talked about it already, are probably not in every company. They do not exist right now, or they will come up slowly. So as a recruiter right now, let's say you're in your role, what would you advise them to do now? Like, is there something that you would say, okay, if you listen to this podcast, you have seen yourself or identified yourself as a traditional recruiter, what is the next step?
I think the next step would be to really, first of all, say, do I really want to either become a AI expert in depth so that I can analyze the algorithms and so forth? If I want to do that, then that's a learning path to go on to. It's a journey to get those skills and develop those skills, which will potentially be very useful. Okay. I think the other thing is to really ask yourself, do I really want to continue to do what I'm doing? Do I want to really continue to do this? Maybe it's time to find another job where my skills could still have some value. Maybe I need to move more into marketing or more into sales or some other field that's more relevant to what I do, because my future in recruiting is limited. Okay. I think you have to be very honest and ask yourself these things. I think the people that are forewarned, who think about these things ahead of time, are the ones that don't get left in the cold, right? It's the ones that go into it, without assuming their job is good forever, that will suddenly get, what? You're letting me go? So be aware, number one. Be educated, learn, read, listen to podcasts like this, pay attention, number one. Number two, decide, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? Do I want to get more into coaching? Do I want to become more to either candidate coaching or hiring manager coaching? If so, then start learning coaching skills. Take courses in that. Become better at that. Maybe I want to do more about dealing with ethical and legal issues. Then maybe I should become much more versed in that, take courses in that, learn a lot more about that kind of thing. So, I mean, I think the point of, if you're a recruiter today, it's don't try to figure out how to become a better interviewer, or don't try to figure out how to become a better screener or sourcer, because those jobs fundamentally are going to be gone. Say, okay, how can I transition myself into a role that does have a future? And we've outlined some of these. Some of the articles I've written have outlined some of these things. You've got to, I think we're going to be moving from transactions to designing new things, to become more of a designer of experiences. Okay, we're going to have people understand psychology, that understands ethics at a higher level. Okay, we're going to need people that can do more, that maybe get into more bargaining and negotiating skills, and helping at the senior level, helping candidates and hiring managers negotiate a salary or a solution. Okay, so I think there's a lot of potential careers and opportunities for anybody in recruiting today. But the first step is to accept the reality that your future doing what you're doing is limited. It has a use by date, and it's at some point you're going to expire. And before that happens, prepare yourself for a new career.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Kevin. I think it's a situation where, depending on where you are, right? If you're in that kind of innovator, early adopter, early majority, you're making plans. There's going to be the late majority and the laggards that are just kind of, yeah, we're cool, we're fine. Oh, look at Klarna. They let everybody go and now they're hiring everybody back. Now, there's always going to be examples of that where companies probably make a big bet and it doesn't quite manifest in the way that they thought it will. But that doesn't mean to say that two things. One, doesn't mean to say that they're completely reversing their decision. And two, everybody else that's watched that has learnt and is not going to go down the same path, right? So there's that kind of compound interest of seeing and observing other companies and how they're approaching it and learning from that. So I do feel as though your article may for some land and be like, nah, this is way off in the future. This is probably something that I need to plan for in a few years' time. But I also think there's probably individuals that are reading that and thinking, yeah, that's very real. That's real. That's happening. I can see it. I know the technology. I know people that are experiencing that. So, we're not sitting here saying we're not trying to fan blind panic. But what that article says is you need to start preparing now. You need to be thinking about this as a real reality that's on the horizon. If you don't, to your point, you'll either be at a point where somebody will be turning around to you and going, oh, okay, your job doesn't exist anymore.
Absolutely.
Or you're needing to move into a kind of different function. And you mentioned marketing and sales, and I do feel like both of those are probably on the same kind of trajectory to a degree. So maybe not the best choices straight away. But I think your follow-on article, and we'll share all of these, they're all in the comments for everybody to see. There are pathways, really interesting pathways for people to start exploring in terms of new career opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. There's many opportunities. There's always opportunities. It's just a matter of being willing to explore what's possible out there and identify areas where AI is not good, where AI has weaknesses. The Workday is a great example. Why Workday did not have a person on staff who was an algorithmic analyst or oversight person, I don't understand. Okay.
Yeah.
We went through the same thing with Amazon about 5 years ago. Exactly the same thing, only that was on sex. They only hire men, not women. This is on age. Same exact thing. We never seem to learn. If they had had somebody on staff who was looking at their algorithms, analyzing what was going on, they wouldn't have had the problem that they have. So it's a matter of there's a new skill right there. That company, I can guarantee you, company's going to be hiring people that have those skills to look at those things. So there's all kinds of opportunities out there. It's just keeping your eyes open for them, being willing to learn and to pick up new skills, or find a place to take what your current skills are and find where they've got a longer lifespan than they do here. But I'm not doom and gloom. I'm just trying to make people aware so they're not caught with their pants down, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So they are aware of what's potentially coming. And you're right, it's going to happen in different industries at different paces. That may never happen in some small companies. They'll probably continue to have regular recruiters, and if that's what you want to be, then find a small company and go in there. Yeah. But be aware.
Definitely.
I would argue, Kevin convinced me so much that I think it's going to happen sooner than later. And I think this is the danger of it, because when I shared the article and when I looked at some comments as well and so on, our profession is always very good in saying, that's not true. Oh, come on. What does Kevin know, right? Oh, for sure not. But I feel like it is also this topic that is one of my key takeaways is the self-awareness part, right? To be self-aware, is this job going to be a promising one for the next 5 or 10 years? Or do I need to now look at things I like the most and then go down different paths? Because I think that is something, they are all quite cool, actually, to be honest. And then really my heart opened when Kevin said, designer of experience. Like, how cool is this? I would have wished 10 years ago I would have a job like that. But now this is probably more realistic than you can ever think of. So thank you so much, Kevin. This was really eye-opening, and I hope we did not scare too many people, but I think we did.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, it's been a real pleasure chatting to you. I thoroughly enjoyed this. And again, for anybody that hasn't read the article, go and read it now. If you didn't, when I prompted you earlier, and sign up to Kevin's Substack, follow the articles. There's some absolutely fascinating content coming through. But for me personally, Kevin, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Same here. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Christian. Really, really appreciated and enjoyed the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.